there's some fish down at the coast. You know.
Yeah, I've been hearing a few reports that the early run, the early hatchery fish are kind of gone now, right? That stock.
I don't know if they don't put them in there anymore.
I know they were putting a few in up till a few years ago, I think.
Yeah, it's now all broodstock.
Right. So.
And there's been a fair, of course, the run was pretty good on the North Oregon coast last year, so the 3-year-olds were showing pretty good.
Right.
But the 2s seem, at least, usually when they're late, that means they're not coming.
Right. Yeah. But boy, they say that every year, and you just never know.
But you never really know. Sometimes these broodstock fish their timing seems to vary a little bit.
Absolutely.
Maybe by when they take them, I'm not sure.
Well, I'm super stoked. We're here at the Lower Sandy River, getting ready to meet up with Jack Glass, Buzz Ramsey, and Steve Lynch with Procure. And this is actually my first steelhead trip of the year, so I am super stoked.
Usually years goes by the number of years they've spent in the ocean after they migrate out as juveniles. Steelhead typically come in, and they, like winter runs, they come in now through March and maybe into even early April. They'll spawn, sometime late winter, and then they'll rear in the river for a full year, or in the case of hatchery fish, they'll keep them for a year in the hatchery because they pour the feed to them to get them up to size. In the wild, they'll spend 2 or maybe 3 years, but usually 2, and then they'll migrate out in the spring to the ocean, and they'll spend 1 summer, 2 summers, and come back. And a few spend maybe 3 years. Some might go back and forth. Steelhead don't die after spawning, so some will go back and forth maybe a few times. And those fish will either stay out longer or make multiple trips to the ocean, or the ones that might be 20 pounds or more.
How you doing, Jack? Good. Look, it's good to see you guys. Nick,
Morning.
good to see you. Been a little while.
Yeah, it's been
Hey.
way too long.
We're still upright. We're going.
Yeah.
This boat's 4 months old.
What's that?
This boat's 4 months old. 4 months. Brand new.
It's a newbie. Doesn't know how to catch fish yet. That's what I want to know.
Oh yeah. First day I put it in the water, had our first salmon in it, and 2 hours.
Oh, really?
Now it's just slept.
I used to fish here 25 years ago. They come in off the Columbia, for spring. It's amazing what fisheries have gone away, because that was one heck of fishing and just pulling spinners.
Right.
I was fishing here about a week ago. We caught a couple natives, but it's been a lighter run this year than the past. And hopefully they're showing up a little late.
Well, welcome to the Sandy River this morning. We're going to go out and see what we can do. We got a little east wind today. That happens a lot out here. But the water's in really nice condition, so it's been kind of a spotty year, but we'll go see what we can find out here. The water's real clear, and got some great friends that's going to join us today and see what we can do.
The water
It was 42, 43 3 days ago. Now it's coming down, like Brandon said, a couple degrees today.
No swimming today.
No swimming. 3 days ago, I saw a gal, the guy I waved to at the beach center, guy and a gal came out and got in the water, wading around waist deep for like a half an hour.
Are you kidding me?
They were taking pictures of each other. Unbelievable. I see some weird things out here. Very weird things, especially in the summertime. Got a nice spread. You guys know how that's done. Sometimes people let them like ducks in a row. Everyone is fishing the same spot. It's so helpful to be able to keep them spread out. The bigger footprint you're covering on the bottom. Okay, we're gonna cast the port side. Here we go. We can stand up. Nice little throw. Hooked some here yesterday, but he can land them.
So when we're doing this with the hook set, you reel down.
I reel and swing. I like a little 3 to 5 foot bow in the line. That kind of keeps it out there. If you keep your line taut right to the bobber, it keeps pulling it back to the boat. So keep a little bow in that line. If you get a lot, you have to mend it, clean it up, of course. But if it's a little bit of bow, we got a snag with it, pretty close.
Please, Lord, let us catch a fish this morning.
Bead down a little bit, slide her back up 2 or 3 fingers.
Oh yeah, Steve, so how often do you put the scent on a soft or hard bead?
Well, with the cooler water temperatures, it'll last longer. So right now with this water temperature, about every 40 minutes. But the main thing when you go to reapply it, I like to dry it. Whether you use a lure or soft plastic, just take the boat rag, just roughly dry it, and then it'll adhere much better. But if you put it all when it's wet, it's pretty much just gonna slide right off.
It's kind of a half egg, half molted looking. Kind of a neat looking bead.
You said it's coming out of the loop here.
Every fish will usually come like so. This water temperature it lasts 40 minutes.
I know it's warm now, right?
It's nice.
Look at that suit there, man. Oh man!
I'll tell you what, I don't like being cold. There's one.
Salmon or steelhead, don't matter.
Kokanee trout, it does not.
Does not matter. We hooked a couple of fish right here first thing yesterday. Hey, good morning.
One bite landed 10. That's not too bad.
No, not bad. How come you're down here already? Too windy up there?
I haven't been out all the way up there yet.
Okay.
So.
Any bites though? Nothing yet.
No, nothing yet.
We came here because
Water temp dropped 2 degrees.
yeah, it's warm right here. That's what we stopped here.
Well, it's good to see ya.
Basic spinning rod, braided line. I am using 40-pound braided line. This maximum line I happen to be using today. We're using the sliding bobber. I do like these ones, these longer ones, because I can tell the attitude of the bobber a lot easier. This is the medium size. The short ones have difficulty telling what's wrong with the bobber, if it's laying on the side or it's tangled up or anything. These things are a little easier to see. We got a sliding line to just a swivel, and then I use the Dave's tangle-free baits, weights, Dave's weights. I like those. Down to just beads. You have to be using a rubber bead today. I do like those. Of course, we're going to scent those up with the appropriate scent.
Okay, it's 10:30. We have not had a bite. But it could change. Sometimes, you know, the water temperature is dropping right now. Generally on the river. I think Jack said it was a couple degrees colder than it was several days ago. When the water temperature is dropping, I've noticed over the years, fish they don't dig that. When it's warming, even slightly, even the difference between morning and afternoon, sometimes that turns them on. The water temperature will stabilize, or maybe it'll go up just a fraction of a degree, maybe a degree or two, and seem to turn the fish on. So I'm thinking at least that the afternoon may be the best bite today. So we'll see what happens, but we're hanging in there, and we are going to catch them winter steelhead. Okay, so we're bobber dogging through here, and we're up by the bridge there, and had our old bobbers out, our wall of death, and it actually worked. So.
Yep. Can you believe it?
We're floating. So what were you doing right there?
We're right under that bridge, right? believe it! What are the odds?
Seriously. Yay. You know, went by a biter. It's a nice big native male.
Yep.
And they're nice and aggressive, so it jumped. Good fight for Nick. I'm glad having somebody that's good with the stick. You know, those are hard to land, those big ones like that. So.
Yeah, that was great. The water's cold. It's been a little bit of a slow day, so I'm feeling very, very lucky.
I think this is just me, and given my experience, but Jack knows way more about Sandy than I'll ever know. But I think it's, you know, we fished this morning, nothing. And now the water temperature is starting to warm. Sun's out, warmer during the day. The water temperature is starting to creep up. And when that water is cold and getting colder, bite's not too good. That's probably what was happening this morning. Now the water is beginning to warm up just a degree or two. And so maybe the fish are starting to turn on. So that's that may have been the reason that fish decided to bite this time. What we're going to do is we're going to put this fish into the Broodstock program. So it's a wild fish. Normally, you'd have to release any wild steelhead, but we're going to put this one into the Broodstock program, so it will actually be used to foster the future run of salmon or steelhead in the Sandy rivers.
You have to be authorized by Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife that we can handle them adequately.
So Nick caught a really nice native steelhead here, and Dad brought it up in his nice protective netting. He's going to put it in the tank right now. ODFW will come down tomorrow and they'll pick this fish up and maybe any other native fish we may get. We're going to show you how this fish can be released safely.
Oh, beauty.
But it's like I say, it's not that any one dam is so bad. It's a cumulative effect of too many, which is why there's talk about removing the 4 dams on the lower Snake River. We're not talking about the dams on the main stem Columbia. We're talking about the 4 on the lower Snake River. Because to get to all that habitat, 70% of the remaining habitat in the Columbia River system is in Idaho. And they've got to traverse 8 dams. And then when the juveniles are coming downriver, as I might have mentioned before, the dams can legally kill 50% and get a no jeopardy. For us to get what they call a no jeopardy, that means we're not killing so many fish that the run can't continue to perpetuate. We have to keep the sport harvest in the lower Columbia, sport and commercial combined harvest on wild Chinook at 2%. So the reason the target is on those 4 dams in Lower Snake is because those dams offer the least benefit to society. The least benefit to society. And, you know, and the goal among those of us that would like to see those dams removed is to make sure we take care of everybody. In other words, we're not talking about tearing those dams out and leaving irrigators high and dry. No. They can still irrigate out of a river. It doesn't have to be out of a reservoir. So there just needs to be a plan that includes those people so they are left whole. If we plan for it, we can backfill the hydropower that's produced by those dams. If shippers that are shipping stuff out of Lewiston, keep in mind, 80% of the commodities that come down the Columbia River are coming out of Tri-Cities below those 4 dams. It's only about 20% that come out of Lewiston. If those shippers up there need subsidized freight, we can subsidize it. The federal government can put together a plan that subsidizes those shipping costs if that's what those users need and keep them whole. So the idea is to put together a plan that recovers salmon, is a boon to the economy. After all, those dams on the lower Snake were some of the last to be built on the Columbia River. And it got to the point during this dam building era that a project to build a dam was the way to bring the pork home from Washington, D.C. You elect your senator and your congressman, and they go to Washington, D.C., and the way to bring the pork home is through a hydro project.
Jobs.
Yeah, jobs. And it was a boon to the region. well, this can be just as big of a boon to the region, to where, we get federal appropriations to take those dams out, and it's a boon. It brings jobs to the region. It's a jobs project, and it recovers salmon, and part of that plan is to keep everybody whole, so nobody is disadvantaged. That's the vision for recovering salmon. Because if we don't do it, salmon will go extinct. Wild salmon will go extinct. And that means that not too long afterwards, hatchery salmon will go extinct. Because you've got to dip in, just like we're talking, you've got to dip into those wild stocks to keep those hatchery fish vibrant and working. So that's, just to have salmon go extinct is unacceptable to me. And for a lot of residents in this region, it's unacceptable to them too.
Jack and Buzz, what was the fishing like in the Sandy River back in the 70s? Like, what are some of your fondest memories?
One of the fondest remembers are all the people that were on the bank. There was a lot of anglers out here.
Well, everyone
Lots
fished the
of them.
bank, man.
Everybody fished the bank. There wasn't a lot of boats, but there was a lot more fish then. They flooded the Sandy in the 70s, 60s and 70s with Steelhead. There was a lot of them. I don't remember how many numbers. At one time, I know in the later 70s, the Sandy was the top Steelhead producing stream in the state of Oregon because it also had winter runs and summer runs.
Right.
So the harvest throughout the year was about 10,000 fish.
Yeah.
And lots of bank opportunity. So some of that's been restricted because of private lands. Now there's more boat activity, but it was bank fishing. I remember days, a whole bunch of people on the bank all the time. Now you rarely see much of that.
Yeah.
4 or 5 maybe instead of 15. There'd be a lot more people. But there were more fish caught then. There was more fish. They flooded the rivers with steelhead back in those days. I caught my first one here in 1964. I was 8 years old on a night crawler and a corky. Or it might have been Okie Drifter. I think it's an Okie Drifter. It was a pink Okie Drifter with a night crawler.
Wow.
With my dad. So yeah, and that was fishing on the bank. We had a little sled and had a little drip boat, and we'd run upriver in the sled just to get out on the bank and fish on the bank. The boat was just transportation from winter steelhead.
Yeah, it was definitely different then. A lot of holes would just be full of fish. And there was people fishing for them, but there was always fish in the hole. That's my perception.
Seemed like it was.
Particularly in the mid and upper river. There was always fish in the hole. You get out in the bank and you'd start fishing. If you hung in there, you'd probably at least hook one.
Somebody, you'd be catching one fairly frequently if you didn't get it yourself.
Yeah. It doesn't, they're not. There was a lot of fish around. I think undoubtedly the wild runs were probably.
We didn't know what they were. None of them were clipped.
Stronger then, but we couldn't identify them. These hatchery programs were new, so the fish were pretty robust as far as the return rate.
And they started with wild brood.
Right.
That's what the stock
Started
was.
the hatcheries with wild brood.
Wild brood.
And what we know today is that ocean conditions are always changing, and wild fish are more resilient to those changes than our hatchery fish. So, I remember years when hatchery fish just weren't responding. And because there were those old washed out strains that weren't rejuvenated with wild genes. One of the reasons we got to have strong numbers of hatchery or wild fish.
Well, we experienced just last year, our wild component of the return here on the Sandy was really quite robust. It was good. The hatchery stocks were down a little bit.
Yeah.
This year we're kind of seeing both seem to be a little bit low so far. I'm keeping my fingers crossed. But just back in 2016 was like near record returns 4 years ago.
Right.
Not very long ago. In fact, the Cedar Creek Hatchery had the largest hatchery return in the history of Cedar Creek Hatchery that year. Over 4,000 fish made it to the hatchery.
Wow.
They normally average around 2,000 to 3,000. Over 4,000 in 2016. Great. It was good angling. Everybody was catching fish.
Yeah.
So the stars all lined up. The moon was right. Everything was right. Those juveniles performed well.
Yeah.
And the wild component was big too. So we are suffering a little bit of that. Maybe still being effects from the 15 drought year. We might still be seeing some of that. Ocean conditions have changed some. Sounds like they're better now with the food component that's in the ocean now. Cocopods and all the other little crustaceans out there that everything's got to eat.
Yeah.
Let's keep our fingers crossed. I think it's going to get better. We're going to see better before getting any worse. It's time. It cycles. I thought maybe this year we'd see the increase. It didn't seem to jump too much yet. There are some fish here.